Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Scoreboard. I'll be honest, I thought to myself, I'm not feeling particularly well at the moment. I don't know if I want to get up at whatever it was, 1:30 in the morning to watch Oman versus Namibia. I taped it, and then I thought, in case it's a good game. So I set my alarm for a couple of times during the game, and I got up the first time and I watched about 10 minutes, and I was like, okay, Oman's struggling here. I don't need to worry about it. I'll set the alarm for about an hour's time and see how Namibia's doing. And I reckon when I got up, I just want to see if I can get the score right. I think when I got up, they were like four down for 70 odd, with the run rate well in hand. And I thought, they're obviously going to win this game without too many problems. They're only chasing 109, a couple of big hits. I know it's a tough wicket, but it should be fine. And then I was like, I might as well stay up. But I was in that sort of days where you're awake, but you're not quite focusing. So even when the last couple of overs happened of that game, I'm not sure I was fully conscious, even though I was awake and watching it, because I kept thinking to myself, well, they can't actually lose this game. And when David Visa hit that 6, I almost went back to bed at that stage because, okay, we're done. And there was just something a bit like what I had for the USA game when I thought USA would come back. Bit the same with Papua New Guinea. I keep back. This is the only time I haven't backed it outside of, by the way, Oman. And I kept going, no, I'm just going to stay. What a ridiculous game. That it came down to the super over, that Oman made some errors when it came to the super over, all those sorts of things. Brilliant. 3 games in. Think of the teams we've had play. We've had USA, we've had Canada, we've had Papua New Guinea, we've had Oman, and we've had Namibia, right? Is not, again, I keep saying it, the correct way. They should, even if you disagree with my general point, that you should have a big blockbuster game to start. There should be a little bit more of push and pull early on of some big name teams. This is the first game where we have 2 teams who have a better than a 50-1 chance of winning the tournament playing each other this afternoon, right? It's ridiculous. And yet, the quality of these contests is ridiculous. Who would have thought a 109 Oman score could end up being the nail-biting thriller of our times? Just remarkable. And the West Indies almost not chasing, 134, 136, whatever it was, against Papua New Guinea the day before as well. Not to mention the USA turnaround. There's been some cricket played in this tournament so far. Let us get to the scoreboard, though. For the start of this, we'll start with the West Indies game. Where are we here? Oh, I went forward about 93 things there. That's not what I wanted to do. All right. Okay, I need to change how this is coming up on my screen so I can scroll around, right? He says optimistically, but unfortunately, Canva doesn't want to let me scroll. I didn't actually want to show you all these clips, although that is a great ball. By the way, that ball swung in and seamed in, which is absolutely fantastic. But let me see if I can scroll. Canva is being a prick right now. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, I might have to skip this because I don't want to watch highlights. I wanted to show you something very specific later on. But, nah, it's not going to let me. We'll just have to skip that. Yeah, we need to get better with our with the clips that we're trying to show, and Canva doesn't really let me fast forward or rewind perfectly. But these are the team maps, and this is something I thought was really, really interesting. The best period for Papua New Guinea in their games is usually the opening phase, and that's largely, well, I suppose, Tony Ura has become a very, very important player to them averaging what, over 30, a huge strike rate. Asad Vala, probably more of a anchor type player, but again, making a lot of making important runs when he needs to, and sticking in. And so that you can see here, that is where they are at their best, right? And think about what they were against the West Indies. They were 8 for 2. They ended up still okay in the power play, all things considered. Akil Hassan, they certainly didn't handle him very, very well. But after that, they did turn that around a little bit. But what's remarkable about this is that the batting really, really is their strength, and they didn't make a lot of runs in that game, even though it was Guyana, even though it was a slow and low pitch. They didn't make a lot. Their bowling is a lot more par, and I think we talked about it on the live reaction video that we did yesterday. But with their bowling, when you look at Papua New Guinea, it really is a case of they kind of stick in, and they put pressure on you, and they make you make decisions against them. So someone like Chad Soper, he's essentially just putting the ball in the right area as many times as possible and saying, you're going to have to take a risk against me, and I think that I'll be able to get away with it. And you look at the Robin Powell dismissal. So I thought it was a phenomenal effort for their bowlers to keep that much pressure on. But let's just have a look at the West Indies team map here for a moment. Their power play batting has been a little bit poor. Middle over is not too good, and it's really been the death where they've had so many of those all-rounders sort of coming together at the end where they've given themselves a bit of a pop. But considering how well they did against Papua New Guinea, you can just see that their power play bowling is an issue, right? I don't know if they have a seamer that they trust. Akil Hassan will sometimes be very, very handy, but there are certain teams and certain surfaces he's not going to help as much with. And they don't really become a plus bowling team until the death. And even then, it's a slight bump up. You look at this team, and this is since 2023, they have assembled a slightly different team. Some of the players are more in form. International, especially, with Papua New Guinea, we know that a lot of this comes from weaker teams, but we still know what they're stronger at and what they're weaker at. With the West Indies, we know that this is always going to be with their full-strength side either. And they're not always playing full-strength teams. But this does not look like a team that is currently 6-1 to win this tournament. Nelson didn't play like that. Just on Papua New Guinea, you can see here how ridiculous it was that they managed to get their runs at the end. They really didn't score any runs all the way through this. And this was with, players like Dariga. He's handy, but, nothing all that special. And tail enders. And there was a lot of stealing singles. There's a lot of really bad bowling by the West Indies. And you want to put this down at a certain point to, they're playing Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea have started really poorly, and they just we're just going to go through the motions here until the game is over. But I did send a message to my friend at one stage of going, and this is when Papua New Guinea was batting. The way the West Indies are playing at the moment is the formula for how you lose to associate teams, especially teams like Papua New Guinea, Ireland back in the old days. Namibia would be another one. Those sorts of teams where they don't make many mistakes. And so if you are putting yourself in a position where you make a couple of mistakes later on, you can really get in a lot of trouble against those sorts of teams. And there's no way that Papua New Guinea should ever have been scoring at 10 runs and over at the end of that game. Assese Bao was really good, smart innings. I like the way he went about it. It was a shame that he didn't get a chance to hit through. He's probably never going to make huge score. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's probably at this level never going to make huge fast scores. I think he is sort of more of a, what's the best way of putting him? The sort of guy that can chip in with scores, and they've got a lot of players like him that probably can average between 18 and 25 at a strike rate of 110 to 125. And that was his day, but I thought he batted absolutely brilliantly. And as I said before, Kipling Dariga, I've seen him bat quite a bit. I'm trying to think. I think I've seen him hit well, maybe once or twice. I'm trying to think back to the, sort of the many times I've seen him play. But I don't think I've ever seen him score at that kind of rate against that kind of team before. I'm having a look. His overall strike rate is 101. That's really, really low. And I've seen him sort of bounce around the order a little bit. They're never quite sure exactly where they want him to play. Again, these two guys probably play two of their best innings, but that's okay because, they didn't get anything out of Ura. Charles Meany looked like he was batting really well and then got himself out. Asad Vala. So they've got more things to give, but it is that kind of, I do think these guys sort of played their best innings there. And this is the West Indies bowlers. I talked about this a lot yesterday. I think that almost the more important thing here is the amount of overs that they bowled with each player, because I do find this absolutely fascinating. And again, I don't really understand it. So the West Indies, who were obviously very much on top, decided that Akil Hussain wouldn't bowl his fourth over, but he had 1 for 9. Romario Shepherd bowled 3. Not okay, fine. Andre Russell, 2 for 19. Where's his fourth over? Roston Chase bowled 4 overs for 26. I'm not sure I would have bowled him after his first over. I'm not sure he had to bowl all that much, or I would have brought him on maybe for one later if he was seeing. But they bowled him right until he bowled in the death, which I thought was remarkable. Azari Joseph bowled his 4 overs. I thought he was fairly average in this game. And Gudakesh Modi got hit for 1 over and then didn't come back, which is weird because that obviously happened to some of the others. So their 2 best spinners didn't bowl out. And you would have to say that their best wicket taker at the moment, Andre Russell, didn't bowl out. Alzari Joseph, I've got no problem with that. It's really the Roston Chase overs, and this game would never have been, and it was hilarious that it's Roston that ended up bailing them out, but this game would never have been in debate if they had bowled more Andre Russell, probably more Gudakesh Modi in that middle period. They just kept making mistakes with when they were using their bowlers over and over again. It really was quite poor. But let's go to the thing that I think is going to be more of an issue to them all the way through this World Cup. It's the fact that they're not particularly good at bowling in the power play. So we have here a 1+ bowler in the power play who has bowled, 1 spell for them, maybe 2 games for them, Shamal Joseph. Interestingly enough, they probably beat Papua New Guinea if he plays, just because I don't know how the Papua New Guinea players would have handled him. They've used Alzari Joseph a lot. Look, he's a par wicket taker. Not great on true economy, but it hasn't really worked. Jason Holder has really struggled to have much of an impact when he's done it. Obed McCoy, definitely a better bowler in the middle. Akil Hussain is good, but usually defensive. Not so much against Papua New Guinea, but usually defensive. And Roston Chase has actually done quite well. I don't mind. I know he got hit yesterday, but I don't have a problem with that. But this is a huge issue going forward. And I feel like they've really changed the odds quite a lot. A lot of people are talking them up. I don't know if they're talking them up as much after yesterday's game. I think it's very hard to win in modern T20 cricket without the ability to take wickets. If you can't take them early on, you are getting a lot of very good players in the world started very well. This is Akil Hussain's true values in T20 eyes since the last World Cup. You can see in the middle, just a sort of a standard defensive bowler, and he's better when he's bowling with that new ball. It's because he has the ability to swing the new ball a little bit, so he's almost playing. It's not unfair to call him a swing bowler, but he is actually swinging the ball around a little bit and everything else. So very much a defensive bowler, but very good at it. And let's just have a look at the West Indies. So they scored at 13 runs and over to win this. This was a phenomenal period where they scored at 3.2 runs and over. And I think I've seen this before. I'm trying to think back to the game. I reckon it is a 50-over World Cup game against the Associates. And I'm wondering if it's not the West Indies losing to Kenya I'm thinking of. But there was a particular game, certainly in one of the older 50-over World Cups, where a similar thing like this happens. And there's other periods like this too. The most famous one where the team won was probably Australia versus Kenya in 2003, where Asif Karim, they just block him out, right? So I've seen this before. But you would never try and score at 3.2 runs and over against a full-strength team. Do you understand what I mean by that? And I understand that you play every team differently. But if you're putting no pressure back on the opposition at all, it's always going to put a lot of pressure on you. And the fact that they've got one period where they score at 3.2 and one period where they score at 13, they were lucky to win that game, right? They were lucky. Ooh, they were lucky to get that to that period. And this one I'm less worried about because by that stage they were in panic mode. But at least they're scoring at a run a ball here. That's like a 2008 Test match strike rate. It's so bizarre. But it'd be really interesting to know what the coaches talked to them about afterwards. This innings almost lost in the game. And, you know, I'm not having a go at Shafane Rutherford. He only faced a couple of balls, but 2 off 7 at that time. This was a bizarre innings because almost all of his runs came off one bowler in 1 over. Ruben Powell looked like he was actually probably going to win them the game and then went out to Chad Soper at that stage. I still don't know what to make of Brandon King's innings. I suppose it helped them set up and win the game. But I thought Roston Chase batted really, really well. From the moment he came out, if I was a West Indian, I would have felt a little bit more confident, you know, considering I think him and Ruben Powell certainly looked like they had the pace of the wicket a little bit more. And the same with Andre Russell. There was a 2 that Andre Russell hit where, so he'd hit the 6, and then he got a sort of a back of a length ball outside off stump, which I think on a normal wicket, in a normal day, he probably tries to hit for 6. But he just punched it for 2, and I thought instantly, oh, okay, they're going to be fine now. And that was the sort of thinking that the rest of their batters hadn't really shown all day. So I thought that was really, really good. And Roston Chase, you know, he's gone from not even being a CPL player to, you know, really doing well in T20 cricket. He's a great fielder as well, which helps. I think he took a very good catch in this game. I think a backward point. His bowling is what it is. He doesn't really spin the ball all that much, but he's clever. He can get the ball to skid through a little bit. And, you know, being tall can help him at times. But you can see here, he started to consistently make runs. I actually think if you go back and you look at the Great West Indies sides, they quite often have a Roston Chase type player. You know, Lendl Simmons probably did that a lot. Marlon Samuels probably did that a lot. A player who can hit 4s and 6s, but is in the side really for games like that, gritty chases and tricky wickets. I think they've always been quite good at thinking about things that way, but also knowing that Roston Chase can hit 4s and 6s and is more likely to hit them than ever before. Sese Bauer was the one who got hit, so after his great batting, unfortunately for him, he got hit a little bit. Murray didn't do much with the ball. I thought Amini bowled a pretty poor first over, but came back in the second over. I'm interested to see his bowling because I've seen him bowl really, really well when he's not at the World Cups. And every time I've seen him at the World Cup, he has struggled a little bit more. Chad Soper is every New Zealand 1990s medium pacer. You got to love him for that. And Asad Vala bowled really, really well until the end there. But I thought Carrico, and now, again, you've got now Nao, isn't it? Going for 9 runs in 2 overs and not coming back on again. I think they probably should have bowled him an extra over at the time, although I understand that. But Carrico was beautiful as well. I really like the way that he bowled. All right, let us get on to the other game. Namibia and Oman's team maps here. Namibia is really interesting, and you'll hear me have talked about this over the last couple of World Cups, if you're not new to this channel, of how consistent they are and how few things they do wrong. Look at the shape of that, right? When I first saw this, when Varun first sent this through to me, I actually thought he'd made a mistake and he'd accidentally just put the same score on for every point. But you look at this and you go, well, what is their strength and what is their weakness? Their strength is consistency, right? They are really good all the way through. Their batting and their power play is probably the only time that they can really bother teams. David Visa won't be all that much in this, so I think you can give them a little bit of a boost here. You can see that we know that they can take new ball wickets. They don't really dominate with the new ball. Their spinners, I looked at their spinner stats before this game, actually, and considering where their spinners have bowled over the last 2 years or whenever it was I'd looked, they have really good figures. You know, they really do keep it in. And then you can see at the end, you know, their death bowling has been very good. And again, that won't be from maximum games with David Visa, so he should strengthen a couple of those parts. But they've just a very, very balanced side. You come over to Oman and you can see that it's not that kind of a shape. You know, they are very even with their batting, but a little bit there's nothing all that special there, although they're probably a little bit better against the spinning ball in the middle of the game. I think they're not too bad there. And then you can see that they've had some really, really good power play bowlers over the last couple of years. Bilal Khan is almost on his own is a big factor for this. And then their spinners come in. Just nothing here. Just nothing at the death. And that, I think, is a huge compliment to how they played this last game, though, for the ability to actually make that, work for him at all, or work for them as a team. Oh, actually, I just want to show you this as well. Just see how they're all lumping and weird, and how beautiful and symmetrical Namibia is in that. Okay, let me just take a quick break, and then we'll be back in a moment for more of the Namibia and Oman game. This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now. Remember that cricket is a funny game. 100 years before we protected our heads, players looked after their groin. So don't be as stupid as old cricketers. Protect your computer. NordVPN is the protection I use when facing cyber short balls or when the rights issue tried to dismiss me. NordVPN will help you get through the straight bat of any GEO blocks so you can watch all the cricket you want. If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so your IP address is set up for you to win. Want to buy an associate cricket shirt from a place that won't ship to your country? Select NordVPN. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that the cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch it. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a cricketer protects their nether region with NordVPN today. Welcome back to the scoreboard. So we're just looking at Oman here. This makes it look like they made more runs than they did, of course, because they never had a peak. They go at 6 runs and over. They got 5.6 runs and over, and then it goes down to 3.8. Now, of course, a lot of this is down to the wickets that they lost and when they lost them. Although, considering their start, what were they? They lost the first 2 wickets, and then when was the third one? When they were 10 runs. Considering that they're after 2.3 overs, the fact that that is still almost one of their highest scoring peaks is ridiculous, right? But they did rebuild quite a bit, and then in that sort of 16 to 12 to 16 over mark. So they lost a wicket right at the end of the 12th over. And then they lost another one around the 15th. But this is probably still, again, a little bit lower than they would have needed. And it's probably cost them the game, just not being able to get that up to even 5 runs and over there. Because as we saw, the way that game played out in the end was quite important. And then a bit like what we said with Papua New Guinea, I thought their tail and guys down the order did well to be able to get them up to a decent score, or I don't know if 109 is a decent score, but apparently on that wicket it's par. Imagine going in to tell it, everyone. Khalid Gale, he made 34 runs with a strike rate of 87, and we've got him as the standout. And it's not wrong, especially where did he come in? It was at number 5. David Visa eventually got him with 1. I haven't seen as much of him play before, but you look at his record and he's quite a consistent batter. I don't think he's ever going to be a massively powerful player. He's got a strike rate of 115 at the moment. But, you know, he looks quite organized, and that's the kind of player in that sort of associate level that can be quite handy, who can handle the spinning ball and can handle different situations. And you can see here, no one else really did anything all that extraordinary at all. I mean, they just didn't make any runs, right? And Trumpelmann, not for the first time, you know, just a fantastic effort with the ball. Very, very good new ball bowler. His ability to swing it, he's quite accurate. It's kind of, it's got that sort of thing where it zips through a little bit more as well. Interesting here that David Visa actually went for runs in a game where no one else managed to. And what was it? Was Visa? And he was player of the match, wasn't he? But again, we see this a lot with the Namibian bowlers, just very, very economical bowlers, you know, not really giving that much away. You know, this was an extreme example of that. So let's have a look at Trumpelmann. Let's see if I can get this one up. Here we go. So obviously this is the first ball of the game. That actually doesn't swing all that much. I'm sure it straightens a little bit, and we might be able to see it in a moment. But we've seen Trumpelmann at times bowl big hooping deliveries, sort of, you know, around off stump, coming back into leg stump. And if you just have a look at this here, it straightens just a little bit. In many ways, that's just a half volley on leg stump. That's not the danger ball that you expect from someone like Trumpelmann, and he's just gotten away with that. This ball is that ball, right? And you can see the difference, because if we go back and we look at the two, this ball here is always going to be around middle and leg, and then just straightens a little bit to maybe hit leg rather. It's still a tricky ball to play, but a more standard ball that you would face. Whereas if we come through to this one, that one is going outside off stump, and you can see, we'll get the slow-mo in a second, but you can actually see what happens. Who was it? It was Akib, wasn't it? I'll show it again. You can see the way it swings back even on this, though. That is going well outside off stump. He's also beaten him a little bit for pace there. But I want to show you his head here. All right, so that's when the ball hits his foot. Look at where his head is. All right. It helps if I pause these things, doesn't it? Look at where his head is here, right? And the ball's hit him there. So he's about 2.5 feet outside the ball at that stage. That's just massive. All right, that is a big, big problem. Some of this is the way he bats, and is an error from him, but a lot of it is also just the fact that he was expecting the ball probably out here, right? And it swung that much back in. Brilliant, brilliant bowling from Trumpelmann there. And that's going to get a lot of better players than Akib out. And Akib's not a bad player at all. I think he said before the game he expected to be man of the match in a couple of games in this tournament, which I love that. Interesting that the seam is not completely straight there as well, but it did not matter from a swing perspective. And the fuller you bowl it, the more it swings, etc., etc. And then later on, he comes around the wicket, and this is more of a classic T20 dismissal, right? Of you know, he's trying to force him over mid-on, mid-off, off a length. Still pretty much seam up. Does look like it does a little bit. Almost looks like it comes back into him a little bit off the seam. But if anything, it probably held up. And of course, when you're trying to force that away, you get stuck. And then we've got the last one here. I like this because it's just a good decision. Because I think a lot of umpires in the world wouldn't give that. Cross seam delivery. It's pitching on off. And takes the pad. I reckon because of where that ball ended up, there's a natural thing that you have with umpiring that makes you not give that out. But that's just a really good spell. I also like that it's not just this ball or the second one over and over again, right? There's a few different kinds of deliveries there. I'm a big fan of Trumpelmann, and I think if he came to, I don't know how old Trumpelmann is now, but if he came to the World Cup for the next 5 or 10 years, he'd just always have at least one game like this. You know, he has those skills, and he can be a player who can also get absolutely hammered as well. So we've got his recent form here. So we could see that against Nepal, he took another 4-wicket haul. You've got a 3-wicket haul here and a couple of 2 wickets. You can see just how often he does take. He's only got 2 games where he didn't go for wickets. And that is occasionally what can happen to him. He can get pumped a little bit when he doesn't get wickets. He does probably need wickets more than other players. But you see, even these games, he went for a few runs as well. So I don't think he's ever going to be a low economy bowler outside of the days when the ball swings for him for longer. But when it does, good luck facing him. But this was interesting, as I would have thought, having watched him now over the last few years, that he would have, 5 years now, I suppose, that he would have at least been a par wicket taker. So it seems to me he's maybe been a bit more of a spree wicket taker up top. And when he does it, you remember it because he generally wins games. Although I suppose it didn't technically win this game. And another thing that was a bit surprising is the fact that he's got 20 wickets against right-handers, but that he's quite below par when it comes to wicket taking against them. So he's actually better against the left-handers. And that might be going back to that seam. So that seam not being 100% straight means that the ball, even though he should get a lot of swing, it maybe won't always come back 100% for him. And it's just a little bit too angled at times and sort of drifts off his axis a little bit. Whereas probably when he's bowling to left-handers, he probably keeps that seam a little bit more straight and a little bit more accurate and gets through his action better. That's a pretty common thing for right-arm bowlers. You don't see it as much for left-arm bowlers. Namibia's totals as well. Scored at 5.33 to start. They probably knew, and obviously they lost Van Lingen early on, they probably knew that Bilal Khan was their biggest danger. So I'm not too, and you know, they would know Oman pretty well by this stage. They've just played him in a 5-match series. So I would assume they always went in with the idea of being, you know, none for 36 or 1 for 36 at the end of their power play. I'm not too worried about that. The issue is, of course, and it's interesting, this is what, the 3rd time we've seen this now, of just teams getting absolutely stuck on some of these pitches. On both the pitches in the West Indies, we've seen this, just that inability to get the ball away at all. And you know, this is probably where Akib comes into the game quite a bit. But this is, if you're chasing, and it's exactly what I said about the West Indies, you really should just never be at 3.6 runs. And I know I'm just trying to look at when they lost their 2nd wicket in 8.3 over mark. So it wasn't, they just got stuck again. And we've seen that a couple of times. If there's anything you want to take away from this, it's that this is not your nephew's IPL, right? This is a very different competition at the moment. They did well, I think, to get themselves back into the game here and get ahead of the game, and then completely gave it away in those last 3 overs. The fact that they hit a 6 in the last 3 overs and still managed to tie, was it 17 off 18 or 18 off 18? Remarkable cricket, really. Entertaining, but not always in the best way possible. Jan Freilich, again, 45. We've seen him, very experienced player. He's been around for a long time now. What is he? 28, 29, probably. His batting is probably more handy than this level. This is probably more of an outlier in terms of average. But you watch him play as a batter and a bowler, and you know he has these kinds of innings within him. And it's obviously very important. But you can just see, I've been talking about for a long time, just the strike rates of a lot of the top order players in Namibia. They just don't put any pressure back on you. And you can see the difference. David Visa only making 9 runs off 8 balls has to everyone else. But they've got to work out how to either rotate the strike more or manipulate twos more. Or you almost want all of their players, especially in the middle overs, to find one more boundary option each against the spinners. And these are not easy things, but I've been saying them now for quite a while. They just don't put enough pressure back on you. American Khan, absolutely brilliant. They're 3 overs, 3 for 7. What a ridiculous, set of figures that is. When did he come on? He was like their 5th bowler, was he? Or was he a 4th bowler? He came on quite late. Look, proper old school kind of, what would you even call him? just one of those guys you see in associate cricket who can get the job done. It was his day. Obviously, the wicket suited him a little bit. Most of their bowlers, though, were economical. Nothing really got away from any of them, right? Like, it wasn't like Namibia ever put any of their bowlers under pressure. And I think that's a really important thing for them going forward, Oman, is that on these kinds of pitches, I do think they have the ability. If you compare them to, say, a team like Canada, where you're just like, well, who's their fifth best bowler? It could get very, very bad. I'm not sure that's quite the case, and not sure that's quite the case with Oman, or shouldn't be the case. At the very least, they should be trusting that they can throw the ball to these bowlers. But yeah, Mehran Khan deserves everything. Didn't get man of the match, though, did he? And does Super Over come into man of the match? I can never remember. We did see here, usually he's pretty economical. That's one thing that we know about him. Some of these you've got, that's a game against Cambodia. But you can see he's been playing against Namibia a bit. Namibia just don't like facing him, which is kind of a little bit bizarre. But let's just fast forward to the end here, because this is absolutely fascinating stuff that I did want to show. So the 74 for 3 at this point. I think I want to go a bit further than that. Here we go. So this is when they lose that 4th wicket. Can I go slightly before that? Like, this is, and we saw Chad Soper do this as well, and we've seen this in West Indies cricket before. These kind of medium pace canny bowlers in West Indies who might have like a couple of tricks, or they just bowl very, very good on certain wickets. Santoki was their prince, right? So they need 25 from 22 here with 7 wickets in hand. And then they bring that down to a runner ball. But look at what he's bowling, right? Very much just slow medium at the stumps. And Chad Soper did a very, very similar thing with his bowling as well when he got Rodman Powell out, of taking the pace off the ball, but not specifically with slower balls, but bowling a ball at the top of off stump so that whatever you have to do is a risk for you. It's a really clever way of going about it. That was the point at which I thought this game was over. Great effort out on the boundary. Well, great effort if you want to knock yourself out. But again, length ball on the stumps, probably maybe getting through a little bit. That's a freak dismissal. I said on the stumps, probably being a bit friendly there, but that's a bit of a freak dismissal. And then again, all those balls are good length, good line. He's not going for Yorkers. They're not slower balls. Got a little bit lucky again there. I forgot about that one. I think I might have actually been asleep during some of this. But, just to get down to right at the end. And then again, that fumble was really, really unfortunate. And it went to the Super Over, and then it didn't quite work for them at the end, sadly for them. But what a fantastic game that was all the way through. And just a preview of the game that's coming up in a little while. South Africa versus Sri Lanka. So you could see here that very, very different kinds of team maps in many ways. And South Africa is quite interesting. Do remember, though, as I said before, that a lot of this data on these bigger teams specifically isn't always their best players. But you look at Sri Lanka here, and we know that they can have a strength in their middle overs bowling. So at the moment, that's a negative. That will go to a positive in this tournament. We know their bowling power play can be really, really good. And I think they could be an even better death bowling team now with Patharana in full flight. I think there's a very big chance they lose this game. And that's probably the time to back them for the tournament if you're looking for a winner to have a bet on in this one. You can see here in the batting power play, they just don't put a lot of pressure on all the way through. This is my main issue with Sri Lanka, that they don't put a lot of pressure on, but I do completely believe their bowling lineup. I might be the biggest cheerleader for their bowling lineup in the world. It's just whether this can match it. And I think if you look at that compared to what we saw with the West Indies before, I don't really understand why one team's 6-1 and the other team is 44-1 or whatever Sri Lanka are at the moment. I think there's an issue there. And let's get on to South Africa. Again, remember, not always full strength. We can see that what they do in ODI cricket is very much replicated here in T20 cricket. they try and get towards the end with as many wickets in hand, and then they hit you for lots of sixes. That isn't, their batting in the middle order hasn't really worked. I don't have a huge issue with that because of the players that they're going to be putting into that middle order, but it is something that they're looking at. The thing I'm most interested in is that even for a team that usually picks 5 bowlers, even if they're not always their frontline bowlers, they really haven't bowled very well for a long time. I think with a full strength lineup, a lot of this can be fixed. I'm not sure though the death bowling is the one that I feel all that comfortable with. But if they combine their 2 spinners in here, and they've certainly got enough new ball bowling that they can throw at, I don't think it's the end of the world. But I do think they have to probably take a lot of wickets in this first part of the game to set themselves up, because then they could have Rabada and Kotsia or Norkia if he's back, like the coach is suggesting, bowling at the end, and they can just, if you're 5 wickets down against them, they should be able to take 3 wickets in the last 4 overs against that with the kind of strike bowling they have. But they need constant wickets all the way through. And I think that's a big part of their game, because they do bat a little bit within themselves until the death. So they are sort of setting themselves up in a way that I think that their 3 most important phases are probably death batting, power ball bowling, and then and bowling with the middle. I think that's where I would be looking at something interesting from them. And we just got here, this is their batters since the last World Cup. So obviously Mendes on true stats has been doing great. Hasaranga has started making a few more runs finally after all the years of people like me talking him up. I feel like a little bit like I did with Jofra Archer's batting when I saw him play some good innings when he was younger. It was like, oh, he can bat as well, and then it never happened. Morne Morkel all-rounder stands out there as well. But yeah, so Hasaranga here. You got Kusal Mendes, and then you can see that a lot you got Rassi, QDK, Markram, Miller, a few guys here who are much better than they should be. And Hendricks, as kind of their backup, has been one of their better players. For me, he's a little bit of an anchor. And that kind of fits what they're looking for. And, they've got a few different players. I'm not sure he's better than the other players, but almost every time I've seen South Africa play over the last year and a half, I feel like I've seen Reza Hendricks make runs. So they might feel a little bit more comfortable with him. We got the Bartman here. Really looking forward to him being unleashed. I thought he probably should have got a late call up in the World Cup. Anrik Norkia would kill for these figures of how he's been bowling of recent times. Partharana is probably over here if we look at all of his figures. Marco Janssen is an interesting one, but obviously they got Kotsia. I don't think they'll need 14. But it's interesting that Shamsi has struggled since the last World Cup a little bit. You can't have Shamsi not taking wickets. I don't think it matters if he goes for a run and over more than everyone else, but you do need him to start taking wickets again. And I'm missing someone else. Did I talk about Hasaranga? Hasaranga as well. I would expect Hasaranga to take more wickets. Now, remember, you're looking at guys like DDS. I can't believe Shanaka is there, by the way. You look at guys like DDS, Shamsi, Maharaj, De Silva, Tikshana. All of those should be, being the sort of World Cup that we've seen so far, will certainly have a part to play in this tournament, if not, the most important part. But just because it really is a little bit more like a subcontinental World Cup. However, their games at the moment are in the USA. So I expect this to be a pitch that probably suits South Africa more than Sri Lanka for this particular game. But as we go ahead, I think things will change a little bit more. Anyway, that is the scoreboard for today. If there's any super chats, I will get to them. There's no super chats. So Abdullah has said, Reza is not a backup. He's a backup, as in they have better players available to him, and he's probably not an elite player, is what I was saying. Like, he's not in the IPL, and he's not playing a lot of top-level franchise cricket. So, I think he's like a Tom Kohler-Cadmore type player. But every time he's played for South Africa, he's outperformed all these other guys who are better players. But if you look at his entire record, Abdullah, where are we? Reza Hendricks. and you just look at his raw numbers, and I know he's changed over the last couple of years, but he's got a strike rate of 128 and an average of 35. Like, that's a pretty standard opener that you can find in, around the world. And the last couple of years, he's done a little bit better than that, but I'm still not sure he has the full game to be able to go all the way through that. Anyway, that's it for me for this one today. I will be back again tomorrow. And of course, if there are, I'm not saying he's not better than Tom Kohler-Gamble. I'm saying he's that level of player. He might be slightly better or slightly below, but we're talking about fringe players, right? Whereas Quinton de Kock, he's outperformed Quinton de Kock in the side. Clearly, Quinton de Kock is a better player than him. Clearly, Aiden Markram is a better player than him. That's what I'm saying. And sometimes those players can be really important at World Cups, and he's certainly doing very, very well. But yeah, so I'll be back if this game is a classic or something really great. We'll do something live after the show. If not, we're trying to do the scoreboard every day around this time, and we'll be back again with more. And we'll also be back after the games today anyway, because we'll be doing overthrows and uncovered podcasts. So one way or another, I'm going to be here. So just subscribe and like, and I'll see you again very, very shortly. This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now.